Welcome to a Sweet Savor Bible School. Thank you for watching. My name is James Reinarz, and this is a clip from a Zoom class I taught recently on the history of Christian hymns, with a focus on singing devotionally. There were several parts to the class, but these clips are just of the lecture portion. More information can be found in the description.
So we're going to talk today about Isaac Watts, and he is affectionately called the Godfather of English hymnody. A lot of big words. Okay, real quick recap. We are now going into the 1700s. So where we are in the 1700s, the Reformation, it largely had restored congregational participation, whether it was in the Anglican form, Lutheran, or Calvinistic form. They all had a kind of a renewed value on congregational participation in various degrees. I mean, if you were in the Church of England, it was still kind of a stripped down formal liturgy with specific moments where you could participate, but hey, it was better than nothing. It was in English, you could understand. And they all brought things into the vernacular of the people. But by and large, whether it was Church in England or the nonconformists, the Puritans, the dissenters, or just the country parishes, they are all very focused on the Psalms. So again, Church of England very much had a scheduled liturgy, very much just handled by the choir and cantors. Nonconformists, those who were kind of revolting from that, still were a psalm-only kind of people, and many still had just choirs. Remember, music is a literacy. It needs to be learned, and music education is not that easy. So it was very hard for them to bring everybody into an ability to sing. And then that's highlighted a lot in the country parishes where it was just kind of like everything goes. There's just quotes where people would bemoan the droll and the descriptions almost of like they're describing kind of animal sounds. And that's what the congregation in the country parish they visited sounded like. One trait of the country parishes, since, again, music education was so limited, even just, reading English was very limited, they developed a technique called lining out. What they would do is maybe there were one or two people who could read music or one or two people who had memorized a few psalms that they could sing, and they would line it out. They would read or sing, actually sometimes just read because nobody could sing. They would line out one line, and then the congregation would repeat. And we'll go on to the next line, and the congregation repeat. And so imagine singing the entire song like that. Maybe they could memorize one or two songs, get a few under their belt, and move away from lining out. And everything was so ad hoc and hard to help or control. So all these different parishes developed all kinds of different ways to do it. Some lined out very well. Some could just take an hour to get through like 5 lines. It was really a difficult state of singing in all the different settings. So now we come to Isaac Watts, and this is a quote at the end of a chapter, an article on Isaac Watts, but I think it frames him very well. One simple fact is eloquent. When Isaac Watts was born, scarcely a hymn was sung in church. When he died 74 years later, the floodgates of church praise had been flung wide open. So he was at the center, and his life spanned a huge change in the English-speaking churches. Okay, so real brief things about his background. He was born in England, Southampton, Hampshire. His father was a nonconformist. They were persecuted under different, this is the time of the revolutions from, Bloody Mary, bringing it back to Catholicism, and then Queen Elizabeth bringing it back to Church of England, and then a little later, there's Oliver Cromwell and the Commonwealth. And under that moment, the nonconformists had some representation, or at least some reprieve from persecution. And then after that, they went back to being imprisoned for not just wanting to fall in line with the Church in England's ways. So his father was a nonconformist, a Puritan specifically. He was even briefly imprisoned for his beliefs. And there's an account of his mother, while Isaac, the oldest of his family, was nursing. She would nurse him outside of the parish building on Sunday mornings as kind of like a silent protest. She could have just not gone to the meeting. They weren't meeting there anyway. They were nonconformists, but she would just kind of make a point to sit out there while the father was in prison. So you can tell that the parents had real clear convictions and values in their Christian belief that they raised Isaac with. Isaac was just a really smart individual, somewhat normal to education of that day, but his father began teaching him, I believe, Latin at age 4, Greek at age 9, Hebrew at age 13. That was the way that kind of education worked. But quickly he developed just a hilarious habit of rhyming all the time in everyday conversation. I'm sure he was cute when he was 3 or whatever, 5. Probably by the time he was 7, it was just a fact. And then a little later, it was just drove his father crazy. His father even began to kind of punish him, whip him if he rhymed too much. And then there's a fun story where once, I think evening prayers before supper, his father caught him with his eyes open. Isaac, why are your eyes open during prayer? And Isaac quipped, a little mouse, for want of stairs, ran up a rope to say its prayers. I mean, they were praying. It's contextual, right? Dad had enough. Maybe it was a whole day of rhymes. He went to go punish and wimp Isaac. Got to get this out of the kid. Just, I don't want you to rhyme. Stop rhyming. And in the middle of being whipped, Isaac cries out, oh, Father, take pity, and I will no more verses make. Sorry, pity take. Father, pity take, and I will no more verses make. He just couldn't help it. It's in his genes. A little later, one source says this is about age 15. He was in the church, their Puritan church in Southampton, and he just complained about the psalm singing. Again, this was not the country parish. This is still a more affluent congregation, well-to-do people, probably a choir. But, his comment was, the way people would sing the psalms, their faces were so not involved, their hearts were so not involved, you could tell they were just not engaged. And his polite way of saying it is, it made you wonder if they were really experiencing a deep inner spirituality. That's how he said it. They were, maybe if you give them the benefit of the doubt, they were just so into it. They had no facial expressions while they sang the Psalms. Well, he complained to his father, and his father challenged him. Well, why don't you give them something better? It's a good father. He's trying to bring out something really great in his smart child, right? So that evening, thought about it, he went to write. And he thought about, where could I go? We only do the Psalms. And he realized, well, there are songs in the Bible that are not the Psalms. He went to Revelation chapter 4, and he wrote the following. This is the first 2 verses of like a 9 or something verse hymn. Behold the glories of the Lamb amidst his Father's throne. Prepare new honors for his name and songs before unknown. So he wrote a rhymed English hymn based off the Psalms and songs in Revelation that the angels sing. And they sang it that night. And everybody really enjoyed it. And that encouraged Isaac, at least in private and for private worship, to continue to write hymns. Then his life goes on. 1698, he becomes an assistant pastor. He graduates, becomes an assistant pastor at age 24. He then kind of takes over in that Puritan congregation at the age, it's 28. And then real quickly, he had always been kind of a weakly constituted individual, but his health deteriorates rapidly. And he did what he could. He needed an assistant even to help him walk around. But after 10 years, he just had to resign from active ministry at age 38. And his congregation loved him so much that they wouldn't allow it. I'm sure they had to bring in other people to do things, but they wouldn't let him off the roster. And he was allowed to just kind of live in one of the congregation members' homes for the next 36 years. And then he passed away at age 74. And that's the end of the story. I mean, you say, wait, he hasn't done anything, right? He hasn't done anything yet. This is kind of a joke.
Well, that's the end of our section. You can learn more about a Sweet Savor Bible School on our website, link in the description. There you can find course descriptions and find out how you can join the next class. And for now, I'll say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. May Jesus bless you, and may we become a savor that is pleasing to our God.